do you want to sit on? Here?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I don't care.
Okay.
What a cute microphone.
I know. Oh, I love the colors.
It's like lighting up.
Yes.
I don't know why I brought my phone.
Just
I'm
put
just
it
gonna
there.
hide it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, welcome everyone. How's everyone doing today? Excited to have you here. Thank you for coming here to Old Town Books. So to our right, we have Lauren Veneziani. She's a film and TV critic and also a celebrity interviewer. You can catch her interviews on her YouTube at dcfilmgirl.com. She's also an avid romance reader like we all are, and also an avid fan of Anna Todd too. We're so happy to have you here, Lauren. So we have a round of applause for Lauren, please.
Thank you, guys. We're so sweet. Thank you.
And we also have Anna Todd here. She's an international best-selling author, writer, producer. She's most known for her After series. Raise your hand if you've read After. That's what I thought. It sold more than 12 million copies worldwide. It's also inspired a very successful film franchise. She also founded the company Frayed Pages Media to produce creative work across multiple mediums. Her latest novel is The Burning, which continues the romance that we first read about in The Falling. We're very happy to have you here with us today, Anna.
Thank you.
Can we have a round of applause, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Are we right? Are we live streaming?
Yes.
Hi, live stream. Yes. Anna's so happy to have you in town. I'm happy to be back in Old Town, first of all, because I was telling Anna, my very first apartment ever was just 5 blocks from here, and I love Old Town, so I'm so happy that you chose Alexandria to come back in. You're one of my best friends. I'm so happy to just see you again and talk to you, and I love all your work, so thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny to not be hanging out in LA.
I know.
I'm like, I came to you this time.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, I'm interviewing you this time. Normally, I just see her and we're catching up over like coffee or lunch or something every single time I'm out in LA. Like, we always try and see each other. Like, we first met in 2019 on the set of After We Collided, and honestly, I just was a fan, and we became, fast friends over the last couple of years. So it's like funny to be interviewing you again, but I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Congratulations on The Burning.
Thank you.
Yes, I've actually read the first 28 chapters. I got it on Tuesday, and I have a little less than 100 pages left. But I love Karina and Kael's story so much. It's just really special, and I love that it's just a slow burn. I know that you've said that like this story The Burning is particularly personal for you, and I'm just wondering if you could elaborate that. Like, do you feel like this is your most personal novel yet?
Yeah, I mean, the third one is definitely a little bit more personal, but it's like the series in general is. With The Falling, it was a bit intentionally very slow burn of like, people kept being like, but they, we're used to like the like steaminess, and I'm like, well, the characters, it doesn't make sense. Like, when it works, but for me, it's like, this wasn't an insta love, which I love, but wasn't an insta love story. But the second one definitely gets way more into the mental health aspect and the community aspect and the kind of found family, which happens a lot around military life. And I found myself, I was going through a lot of transitions in life in general. And I found myself feeling like I was kind of in a time machine, especially in The Burning and in the third one. I almost said the title, but we haven't announced it yet. I felt like I was going in a time machine. So it was personal, and sometimes it was refreshing, and then other times it was, oh wait, is it in the back of the book? Okay, well, spoiler. I was like, okay, well then I guess I can see it. I actually did know that it was the back of the book, and I was like, we should have announced it before the whatever, but here we are. I felt like kind of going in a time machine, and some parts were like nostalgic and warm, and then other parts not so much. But definitely personal. Like, even Elodie, well, you guys already know from The Falling, Elodie is pregnant and alone, and I was also pregnant and completely alone my entire pregnancy. And just, having people that you love gone and you don't know when they're coming back, and having to find a sense of community when everybody's far away from their families, and everybody, at least especially in my books and every book I write, everyone's kind of has their own struggle going on. So it was personal, but it was very much like, even if the exact scenario wasn't the same, it was like the feeling and the setup of the scenes were very much personal.
Right. Yeah, and especially just exploring the mental health on both character sides. I mean, even with Kalina, like I'm just like, oh, like she's just spacing out, and I'm like, that's me, like off in a different world, like, you know, out the door and everything. So talk about why it's important to have the mental health and anxiety also in your romance novels. Obviously, like After had a little bit too, like especially with Hardin's character, but I love that you still touch base on that in the romance novels too.
Yeah, so I think I feel like I just can't help it, because like all of us have something going on, like, or did and recovered, but most of it's like, even if you know, might not be ready to like face it, everybody's, I mean, look at the world we're in, times have changed, world's hard, everything's hard. So for Karina, especially with the first book, people kept saying like, but she's just so like, it's really stressful to listen to her mind. And I'm like, well, that must be nice if you don't relate. I'm like, so what's going on in yours? You're just out here living life. Like, so I was like, oh, but I also loved that, because then people who don't have anxiety or don't overthink or don't analyze every second of every day, even if it stresses them out, it's like maybe gives them a little bit of empathy for people which a lot of people do, have those mental health issues. And hers so far is undiagnosed, but clearly she knows she has it. And as a reader, you can tell that she has anxiety and should do more to take care of herself instead of everyone else around her. And then for Kael and Mendoza, I'm like thinking sometimes the two books blur together, so I don't want to spoil anything, but it's impossible, you know, to go to war and come back and not have a mental health issue. And especially if you already have underlying things and then you are shipped away and you come home and there's just so much going on. So I tried to make the other characters come alive a little more in The Burning too, and get attached to them as well, because people kept saying like, Karina doesn't have any friends, and they said the same thing about Tessa. And I'm like, in reality, I mean, some of us like have this girl gang and this group of women that support us to lift us up, but it's like, especially book readers, and I'm not speaking for you guys in particular, but just the ones I know and myself as one and my friends, and it's like most of us don't have, especially at that age, do not have this like girl gang that uplifts you. And if you do, that's freaking amazing, and I hope you appreciate what you have. But I tend to write like isolated characters, because I kind of was isolated my whole life. Even if I had friends, like the older you get, now I finally do feel like I have like a support system of like really amazing women around me, but that's very kind of recent. So that's why my characters don't tend to have this like amazing group of women. And one day I'm sure I'll write characters that do, but it's just, I like to write what is very relatable to me as like my own version of therapy.
Yeah. Well, with Karina and Kael, like it's definitely like we said, like a slow burn romance, where I felt like in After it's almost like there's more of an like immediate spark. I do love slow burn romance, but it's definitely a different type of pace. What is your favorite thing about writing slow burn romance, or other slow burn romances that you particularly love as well?
Yeah, so I did this list the other day for Frolic of like my favorite slow burn romances, and I realized like every single one of my favorite books are slow burn. Wow. And all except for one, all fantasy also. I was like, oh, that's okay. I mean, I should know that by looking at my bookshelf, but I didn't really realize that so many of them were slow burn. I love to also read insta love, or the like immediate attraction, but for me, especially being such a like, I analyze the tiniest things, not in other people's books. Sometimes when I'm reading, I'm like, I don't care if they were just like in New York and now they're like not, I don't know. I don't care about plot holes or what, that kind of stuff doesn't bother me as long as the characters are entertaining and engaging. But for me, I'm like, I wanted The Falling especially to be more grounded. Like After was very like young, first love, dramatic, like something's always going on. It was also the format I wrote in was very like, it was serialized. So for this, I intentionally wanted it to feel like what it feels like to fall in love with somebody, but not really know if you're falling in love. And it's still pretty fast, considering the book is like 2 weeks of a time period. So I liked writing the pace of it, mostly because it felt a little more grounded and a little more realistic. And I also don't want to just write the same, like I love the chaos, but I don't want to write that same like and honestly, with after their, first of all, their attraction was 100% lust. It wasn't not love at first. And for me, with this story, it was more important to get that like foundational, like genuine intimacy without being technically intimate, and trusting and having a bond that doesn't only revolve around physical, Yeah. So that was the biggest reason why I did that. And I just love a slow burn, because the payoff is like, it's just so worth it. And I'm not always going to write slow burn, but, and even in after, they don't have like, full on intimacy until like chapter 80.
Right.
But there is a lot of other stuff going on, and a lot more like, immediate attraction. But again, it was more like physical attraction than that like foundational love, which I just want to write different, but I don't want to just because after was successful, I don't want to just keep writing that kind of story, because what's the point then of being a writer?
I'm like, I do want to believe that Tessa and Hardin was a little bit more love just at the beginning too. I'm like,
like it definitely.
I'm like, don't break my heart too much.
And it can, like that kind of intensity can absolutely feel like love.
Yeah,
it's just like when the trust isn't there, it's really hard to like full on like adult love. It was love for like an 18-year-old girl.
I'm just kidding. Hardin's my favorite book boyfriend. So
for sure. Sometimes when I say that, people are like, they did love each other. I'm like, they did, but in a very like burning, like fireworky way. Where this, I wanted it to be like a more, because Karina's also very much not like Tessa.
Yeah,
she's not impulsive. Even if she thinks about being impulsive, she's not. So it just didn't make sense for it to be like this. But I will say, the burning is definitely faster than the falling, and then the third one is just stressful. Like, it's romantic and beautiful, but it is chaotic. But a lot of just stuff happens, and of course it ends in a cliffhanger, because that's what I do. I can't help it.
Oh gosh.
I'm like, I can't. I don't think I'll ever write a book that doesn't have a cliffhanger.
Well, I love how you write romance and relationships. And in The Burning, I do feel like it was a little bit steamier. And I have to admit, like, that is what drew me to you as a writer when I first started reading your novels. So honestly, how do you go about writing the steamier scenes? Like, are you sitting alone in your coffee shop, writing the steamier scenes? Like, how do you go about writing it? And what tips would you have for fellow romance novels, or even aspiring romance, like novel writers?
I mean, honestly, it comes pretty naturally.
Yeah.
But I do write them in public. Sometimes I'll like dim my screen.
I'm always wondering where you're at. If it's in the bookshop, if you're like
usually like in a coffee shop. And even like last week, I was writing for a different book, and I was like, my coffee shop that I go to has these 4 chairs, and they're like the comfiest chairs ever. They have other chairs, but I only sit in these like really blue, like comfy chairs. So 2 of them are on this side, and then like all the people waiting for their coffees are there. So I hate sitting there. So the other ones are like my like go-to comfort, because nobody can see what I'm writing. So like if I have to sit in these ones, I'll like turn the screen down, and I'm always telling my partner like, I don't want someone to steal my idea, but really it's because it's like, and then I blah blah blah. So I'm just like, I don't want somebody reading like, and there's writers. My coffee shop's like full of other writers, but mostly screenwriters. So you can just tell it's just a writer place. So it's not like, but I would say just try not to overthink it. In the first time you write it, try to have as much fun, or as much like, for me, so you're at a part, but it gets steamier than that. Even from there on, it's like it gets steamier.
So only 28 pages.
I'm like from there, that's like the reconnection. But after that, it's like they're, they trust each other. There's like just a different level of trust there. So there's, more steam. But I would say not to overthink it the first time. And then in the second time you go through it, whether it's an editor or a beta reader or a friend, then you think about, where are there, I hate this answer, but it's so true. It's like the technical parts are what gets me sometimes, where like my editor will be like, so where's her arm? And I'm like, oh yeah, that doesn't make sense. Or like, what happened? Like, how would that work? Like, there's like a thing happening with the chair, and she's like, but she was against the chair and the back of the chair, and now they're not. So it's like,
your editor's your intimacy coordinator.
Editor. Yes. Where she's like, they need to get to the front of the chair for that to be physically possible. And I was like, good point. Because it's like, otherwise they just like either knocked her over the chair. She like flipped back. It's like, so the technical stuff, it comes after the fun part. Like just write it. And yeah, I would try not to overthink it and don't be embarrassed about it. Like it's 2023. We should not be ashamed of sexuality. So just have fun with it and then get to the technical stuff of like, make sure they both have 2 arms and 2 legs. Make sure that like, you're just paying attention to like, I just try to like visualize. The first time I do it, I don't. But after I get it all down, then I try to visualize like, is that humanly possible?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I love that this book was published under your own imprint, Wattpad webtoon book, Frayed Pages, and Wattpad books. So congratulations on that. That's so exciting. What are your plans for the imprint moving forward? I saw that Pia Mia just announced that she was doing a book with you as well, but talk a little bit more about just the plans of it moving forward.
Yeah, so next year we've got 5 books coming out that aren't even mine. So we've got like, I've got 3 myself and then 5, so 8 total within the imprint. And one's going to be another graphic novel, obviously, because we're doing a series, and then the third of this, and then another book that I haven't talked about or haven't been able, because I'm not allowed to talk about it yet. But
she's always doing this to me at the coffee shop too, by the way. She's like, I'm not allowed to talk about it yet, but like,
I'm like, you know what I'm talking about,
right? But
I'm not allowed to technically talk about it, but I'm very excited about it. But I basically made this idea in my head a couple years ago. I was at Simon & Schuster, which used to be that was my first publisher. And somebody was walking by, and if you're having a conversation in public in front of me, I'm absolutely listening to everything you're saying. Even if you're sitting behind me at dinner, like nothing is private. I'm listening to everything you're saying. Yeah. And I heard this person say something, Derek Jeter's imprint. And I was like, Derek Jeter, isn't that, which first of all, I was like, I know it's an athlete, but I don't know what kind. So I was like, I know he's something, but I was like, what is he doing writing books? Oh, wow. And so I asked my editor, like, what, Derek Jeter is like writing like a biography or something, or autobiography. And he was like, no. It's like an imprint, like how and again, this was like very baby, and like after wasn't even out yet. Oh, and he was like, there's this thing, like basically the imprint that you're under is this. Derek Jeter has one where he curates books. And I was like, what does he know about books? And they were like, but he's got a whole team of people. And then I was like, oh, that would be cool. And then I like shelved it for a couple years, like literally like 8-ish years. And then I was having a meeting with my agent, who's also kind of my like partner. Like we're producing some stuff together. It's become more of just her being my book agent. Mm-hmm. And I said, by the time I'm 40, I really want to have my own imprint. Like, I don't know where, I don't know how, but that's like what I want by the time I'm 40. And she was like, okay, well, we've got some time, so let's, think about it. And then I got an offer because I was sort of in between publishers. Like I self-published The Brightest Stars the first time and realized that most of my readers are paperback readers, and it's a lot harder if you don't have that like middle person to get your books into stores. Now it's a little easier. There's other imprints publishing indie authors, which I love to see new faces and new names in bookstores, but at the time this wasn't really a thing. So I was like, I'm just going to self-publish, and then most of my readers are outside of the States and I have publishers there. So I was like, everybody's self-publishing. I can do it. I had literally a warehouse stuck in Target, and they didn't, like, I didn't even know how to get them out of there, of The Brightest Stars, like the original one. And I was like, okay, this is not what I expected. So we ended up figuring it out, but it was a nightmare. I was like, where are the books? And they're like, where are the books? And I'm like, I don't know. So they were in a warehouse somewhere and we found them. But it's not ideal when you don't know what you're doing and you try to have paperback. Like if you're just doing ebook and you're just doing Amazon, like order to, or print to order, it works. But there's also something about like, just personally, every author has their own choice and everyone can do what they feel is right for them. But just the idea of only being able to get my books on Amazon also just like kind of killed a little part of my soul. So I was like, let's figure out something else. So I was in between publishers, had obviously, because of the films and all that stuff, I had even more interest than before. But I just felt like it was the same as it was, 8 years ago when I was interviewing editors, and my editor I had in the beginning, who's amazing and incredible, he left to go to like a fun publishing house where they only do graphic novels and it's like his passion. So I was like, well, okay, I'll interview with some editors. I just didn't feel like I felt like nothing changed in publishing, and it had been a long time. So I was like, oh, okay. And then my agent was like, well, maybe we should try for an imprint with a big house. And I was like, okay. So then we had meetings. I had some pretty good options, like, really good options, luckily. But there was like something missing where I felt like, which again, publishing is about making money and the bottom line and all that stuff. But I got fortunate enough to not have to have that be my only focus, where I'm like, this is a long-term thing for me. So then I was like, maybe we just go full circle and like go to Wattpad and see if they want to do it, because they have a distribution with Macmillan. But then I wouldn't have to technically sign with a big publisher. So I went to them and thought, I don't exactly know what's going to happen with this, but this is my idea. I want to have an imprint. We could do like half the authors from Wattpad, which was my plan anyways, was to do like pretty much all unpublished people, or people who've only written books but don't have a big name or don't have their books already in stores. And Wattpad was immediately like, yeah, let's do it tomorrow. I was like, oh, okay. So then it was a little fast, but it's like a good problem to have. But then I was like, I do this way too often though, where I like will go in a meeting and pitch something, and then they're like, yeah, let's do it. And then I'm like, oh, I should have done the other stuff first, but somehow it works out for me being not prepared. So long story short, now we have Frayed Pages by Wattpad Books, and we have incredible authors from Wattpad, some of my favorite ones. We have Pia, who is an avid reader. Her story is so good.
Can't wait to read it.
It's so entertaining. I was just like, wow, okay. And it's definitely, I mean, again, I'm not going to like spoil the book or anything, but it's definitely just kind of it's a coming of age story, but it does have that like fantasy element, not fantasy as in paranormal, but of like the life that we all think Hollywood is. And we all think that Pia, or Princess is the girl's name, but obviously it's semi-autobiographical, fictionalized story. Mm-hmm. We think that it's this glamorized thing, and it's like, actually there's a lot of really inappropriate things that happen. There's a lot of pressure to get a lot of things done to your face and your body that maybe you're not comfortable or old enough to do. There's a lot of pressure to look a certain way, have a certain weight. There's just so much toxic, just bad, like awful trauma that a lot of now, especially living in LA and having friends in different parts of the industry, I'm like, wow, this is nothing like I thought it was when I was living in Texas and just like watching people on TV. So it definitely shines a light on that, but also has this really empowering, really like, I just got really attached to the character, and I loved like rooting for her. And sometimes it's brutal because again, that's Hollywood. And this music industry is just a whole other beast. Yeah. So it's just really fun. I'm excited. We have a couple other authors that we haven't announced yet. So I'm just really excited and just like proud. Like at first I was terrified because I was like, what if this all just goes so wrong? And then we opened up submissions and had so many more entries than we ever dreamed of. Awesome. So I've gotten to hire some more employees. So Frayed Pages is just like growing at a very rapid pace. Even the film side, I hired like an executive, which I was like, oh, in 5 years we'll have an executive. And then it was like, I can't do all of this. We have to hire someone. So it's been really, really great, but we'll see how it goes.
Well, I have some fun questions. I'm curious if Karina and Kael were going to go on a double date with Tessa and Hardin. How do you think it would go? And do you think they would get along? I feel like Hardin and Kael would just be like...
Yeah, it depends. So would it be like freshman Tessa or like older Tessa and Hardin?
Interesting. Yeah. Let's go with like books like 1 and 2 for
Yeah, that would definitely be a different vibe. But they're older, I feel like they all would get along.
Yeah.
But I feel like books 1 and 2 and like book 1 of The Falling.
Yeah.
I feel like Hardin would be like, why are we even here?
Yeah.
What are we doing? I don't want to be here. Tessa would be like trying to comfort Karina and make her feel better about, and like immediately notice that she's anxious and try to like make her like Tessa, even though in first after book, she's not always a girl's girl. She's very judgmental because she's insecure and projects it on other people. And she's especially Molly. And yeah, when I reread stuff, I'm like, man, Tessa was more judgmental than I realized. And she was not a girl's girl until later, but that's okay. We all grow. But I feel like her and Karina would get along a little more. But I feel so like too. Kael probably would say like 3 words, and then Hardin would think that Kael's an asshole. Yeah. And then they would leave and never hang out again. And Karina and Tessa would like text sometimes. Yeah. But I just don't feel like the 4 of them. And definitely Kael, especially because he wouldn't know Hardin's story, he would be like, "This get dude. Over it. Like this whiny baby who's like brooding for no reason."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Would you ever write fan fiction about BTS?
So in my like just like fun time, I don't have a ton of free time, so I always like to call it fun time.
Okay.
In my fun time, I definitely write things that could be considered it.
Okay.
But I wouldn't say no, but I also like, I think especially from going from being like 24 when I wrote Harry fanfiction, and it's just a different like, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with BTS. I did see, yeah, I'm like, I saw that shirt when I sat down. But basically the culture is so different, and it just, for me, I don't know if I could bring myself to do it. And honestly, I have this very delusional dream that one day Namjoon, who's my bias, who's a reader and a genius, is going to read one of my books, and I definitely don't want it to be about him.
Okay.
So I feel like there's certain people, like, I feel like especially with Harry Styles, it's like there's something about like the way he is, and especially now, the older he gets, I'm like, thank God I stand the right person.
I think so too. Yeah, we all did.
Yeah, I'm like, thank God he hasn't let us down, because then 100. I don't know what life would even be like.
Yes.
But he never will.
No.
But I just, and
He's
BTS
perfect.
wouldn't either, but it's just like a different, like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like you have to kind of be a fan of both of them to understand the dynamic and the difference between. But for me, and I have, like, I love that people write it. I love that people read it. But I just, again, my delusional mind's like, no, they're going to read it. There's like dedications to my books. I'm like, they're going to read these. So I definitely don't know if I would. And if I did, it wouldn't be like super steamy, just out of respect for like the culture and what they would be uncomfortable with. Like Harry is very open and very just totally different than Namjoon, who is the only one I think I would write a fanfic about. So here we are.
Well, I have a couple more questions, and then I know we're going to open up to a couple of audience Q&As. What was the best thing about the Taylor Swift Eras tour?
I mean, I would say
seemed like you had a blast.
It was so fun. Oh my God. It just was so nostalgic. Like, it just made me feel like I've been in the last like year, I've been just trying to embrace my like inner child that never actually got to like be a child. Yeah. So I've been doing like way more like young things. Like I've got a bunch of stuffed animals on my bed, and I have like a cute, my birthday cake. You were there. I got this like teenage looking birthday cake. I've been wearing like pink all the time. Like I've just got to do all the stuff that I never got to do because I had to grow up way too fast. So it just felt like, and I remember the first time I ever heard Taylor Swift, I was literally like 16 years old, driving to a family reunion with my family. And so it just like brought me back to all of those, like growing up with Taylor, like, and it just, and because it was Eras Tour, it was like literally every era where I was like, I just remembered like each part of my life as we were going through these albums. And also just Swifties are just enough. It's like, it just was like a big, like, fun thing. And most, I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but most Swifties are like girls. Like you don't, it's not like, you don't walk around and see all of them just like that. It's like everybody's like hyping each other up, and like friendship concert, bracelets. Everyone's having fun. Yeah. Everybody was having fun. And I just got to like bond with my friends but I did have like, to be honest, I did have a little of like, because I also saw BTS there.
Oh, in Vegas.
And I'm like at the same thing. And I'm like, and they stayed in the hotel that we were staying in. And so I had a little bit of like, this is amazing, but like, I literally, the amount of times I talked about BTS, which I'll find a way to do it anyway, but it just, there was a little bit of that, but honestly, it was so good. I'm so glad I went. And now she's in LA, but I'm traveling.
I know, yeah.
And I just don't have time. Like when I get back, I have so much stuff to do. I'm like, I should be grateful I got to see her once on the floor. So I probably shouldn't be like stingy and try to go again. And my yoga place is having like a Taylor Swift night, like, or had one on, what's today?
The 3rd.
The Thursday.
Yeah.
So it's already done and I missed it. And I was like, I actually felt like sad missing that.
Aww.
I was like, oh. okay, here we are.
Well, I know you love the Barbie movie. I did too. I don't know who's seen it, but I was obsessed with it. And we saw Greta Gerwig's Little Women together.
Yes.
I love her as a director. What was your favorite thing about the Barbie film, since we haven't talked about it yet?
I think, well, my favorite thing is like post Barbie movie is seeing the conversations around the movie.
Yeah.
That has been, I think, the movie itself is like, felt like, I just kind of have missed it. Is I love an indie movie. That's like all I watch indie films way more than these. I'm not a big blockbuster person. I've never seen any of the like Marvel, DC. I never.
Star Wars, yeah.
Star Wars, like I just don't like those big budget, like big movies are just not my vibe. I did see Top Gun and I was just like, what is, like, they've been in a plane for 3 hours, like what? And I remember watching the first one, I was young, and so I liked it. So I was like, oh, this will be great. And then I was like, I think I'm the only person that doesn't like this movie. But I'm not a big, like, these big blockbuster movie type of person at all. But I was also so proud that Greta got to be this big blockbuster type movie. But I just felt like it was like a real, like, I thought going in, it was just going to be entertainment and fun and laughing. And then I was like laughing, crying, being like, oh, this is so relatable. Like, I feel like we've all needed to watch it like 4 times to actually get the like layers of what was happening. And then I've been watching all of these like think pieces on TikTok about like really intelligent points about the film. And I love pissing off all these like random people who've never seen the movie being like, this is anti-man. I'm like, actually, it's absolutely not.
Yeah.
And the theater just being there with like all of these like women, men, every gender identified is like in just Barbie outfits, and like everybody was happy. And like, again, I usually watch like sad indie films. So in the theater, nobody's like, but everybody was so excited. So it was just really great. But I would say the script, which is a very, vague statement, but the script was, I want to read all versions of that script. I want to see all the cut scenes. I'm like, that could have easily not worked. Like if anyone else directed that film, I really don't think it would have worked.
No, she did a
because
great
there were
job.
times where I was like, even seeing clips, I was like, how did they get Ryan Gosling to look so like icky? Yeah. But then I was like, but that's the point.
Yeah,
like he's supposed to look like that.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I don't know if you guys saw the like the real Malibu Barbie house they did for promotion. Yeah. I was like, well, I live 20 minutes from Malibu. Maybe I should like book it. And I was so confused. I won't spoil anything, but I was so confused because in the Malibu Barbie house, they had this like horse and this like thing. And then the pool said like Ken. And I was like, ew, I don't want to stay there. And because that was like before I even saw the film. And I was like, this is Barbie's house. But now I'm like, oh, okay. So I would say just like the discourse around the film in general and the conversations that we're having. And also like, again, most of those, and I have female identified friends who love DC and Marvel and all the universes, but this felt like a film for like us, or from like, there's a couple guys here, but it felt like a film for us. And I'm like, finally, we get this like massive film with actual promotion and we get to have fun. So it just felt like a world of its own. And I'm still like stuck in Barbie land.
Oh my God. Yeah. For me, I mean, as a film critic, I'm like, people are going to the movies again, like Barbie,
yes,
and Oppenheimer.
It was packed.
Yeah. I'm like, I've been trying to get people to go to the theater for the past decade now, but I mean, obviously like this one was like the one. So I feel like like everybody's been going to see it.
Yeah. That was also cool to see. Cause usually when we go to films, like, and I went to the 4 p.m. showing because I'm not a night girl at all.
Yeah.
Like I want to be asleep by like 8 p.m.
That's like me.
Yeah. I'm not a night person like at all. So I went to the 4 p.m. showing and I was like, oh, and it was
still crowded, right?
It was still crowded.
Yeah.
And it was so cool to just see like so many people, and the whole like Century City thing, I literally was seeing it in Century City for those of you who saw the movie. Yeah. So the whole like Ken living Century City is literally sums up Century City. Love them all, but the rest of it, I'm like, this is literally like, makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I do want to open it up to some questions in the audience if anyone has a question before we get to the signing. Is there any questions for Anna? I know it's a small audience. Yes.
I'm like, no pressure.
I'm like, it's honestly fine. I mean, it's an intimate audience. I do have another question though. I'm curious, what have been some of your other favorite series or films or K-dramas that you've been watching lately?
Yeah, so I saw the film Past Lives.
Oh yeah, actually, and that's like I was traveling all June, so that's the one I didn't see, but I love A24, so I'll definitely see it.
It was A24, and it was like half American, half Korean, and so I was like, this is gonna be great.
Am I gonna like it?
Yeah,
I think I'll love it.
Yeah, I love it. It's like that kind of like. Some people are like, it's boring, but that is my perfect. I can't wait that. I just love character stories. I don't need explosions and car chases and all that stuff. I just want to watch people talk and get to know their relationship. And you'll love it.
Okay.
It was so good. I also just finished The Good Bad Mother, which is a Korean drama, and it was so good, but it was very stressful.
Wow, yeah.
But it had a lot of different dynamics. Like, it was funny, and that's hard to pull off of like a very serious story with a lot of humor. The casting was perfect. It just had a really good storyline. I pretty much only watch Korean series, to be honest. And especially once you watch the storytelling of different cultures, and then you watch, like, it's just, for me, it's like totally different now, where I'm like, oh, like, why is this not as great? And even just like the production value and the work they've really put into it. They don't just like pop people off TikTok into films and stuff. So it's like, and I did that, so I'm being shading myself, but it's like, that wasn't my choice. And some of them were great, and sometimes it does work, but it just feels like lately it's like, what am I supposed to be watching? I'm not falling for anything. The Summer I Turned Pretty is the exception, because it's freaking amazing.
Yeah.
And that has this kind of...
Team Jeremiah, sorry.
Yeah, I know. I know. Everyone keeps saying, like, on TikTok, everyone's like, once you're over 30, you will definitely be Team Jeremiah. I'm like,
I know you're Team Conrad.
Yeah. I'm like, I love him.
It's mainly because, like, Gavin is so cute. Who's the Team Jeremiah?
You pick Conrad, you pick Jeremiah.
But Hardin is my favorite. I just, like, I can't get over Gavin, though. I can't get over Gavin.
Yeah, I do
I
think
can't get over him.
I feel like
for the series,
the casting.
It's the casting.
It's the casting.
Like, I feel like if Chris was like out there like Gavin is,
Yeah, I really think it's the casting.
Like, you know, like Hero, really. He's pretty like off social media, like nobody really knows what's up.
Yeah.
Like,
so I feel like it is like casting. I really do, especially compared to the books. I really do like Jeremiah a lot.
Right.
I'm just like, no, I feel like he's like and ironically, even though he's the soft one, he's like, to me, he's way more manipulative. Yeah. So I'm just like, you're supposed to be the soft one, but yeah. But again, I love the actor. Like, it's impossible to like not like him. I like him way more in the show, but I'm still just like, nah.
But at least with The Summer I Turned Pretty, I feel like there is more like Team Conrad, Team Jeremiah versus like Twilight. It was like full blown Team Edward. I mean, there were some Team Jacob fans out there, like Aaron, but like,
I mean, I only know like 3.
I know, oh my god.
So now 4. I'm just like, I want to do like a case study one day and just interview all the Team Jacobs of like, and in one way, it's like that's definitely probably healthier, but.
Who are your favorite book boyfriends that aren't your own? That you made up.
Will Herondale is my like number 1 from the Infernal Devices series. He's like absolutely 1,000,000% number 1.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, it's like.
I know you love Edward too.
Yeah, I love Edward.
Yeah.
So Edward, I feel like that was like. In my head, I was like, duh, but yeah, I should probably say it out loud. I love Edward. I don't know how many of you read The Fourth Wing, but Zayden's my like newest love of my life. I reread so much though, that's a problem.
Right,
and I feel like, and I'm a loyal girl, so it's like Will, Edward, Hardin, even though I made him, but I'm like, absolutely.
He's my favorite. I've read, I've reread after like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, so, and then obviously like Mr. Darcy, but he's like been dead for 200 years.
Oh, but Darcy's definitely up there. My mom would say that's her fave.
Yeah, it's like and I like put him, like pieces of him in all of my male characters. So I'm like, he's still alive for me.
Well, even in this, you recognize Elena and Damon, because I was I love Stefan at first, and then like Damon, like season 3, I was just like, oh,
it's like Damon TV version, I would say would be my like one of my top, and Klaus, like one of my top 5. But book Damon, the books are just very different. I don't know how many of you have read them.
I only watched
and
the
I
series,
liked them I loved them at the time, but then once the show came out, I was like, whoa.
Yeah,
Okay, it's
different.
very, very different. Like Caroline has like puppies and all this stuff, and she's like I was like, and Caroline and Damon are my favorites. Like Elena, I love her, but I'm like, girl.
Yeah.
And Bonnie never got what the character arc she deserved. So but I definitely, Damon in the books he was great, but not, the series just blew the books for me, which never happens, by the way. I always choose team book.
Yeah. Fun. Well, thank you so much for having everybody here, and thank you for coming to Alexandria. And it was so much fun chatting with you, in front of an audience this time.
Yeah.
I feel like we're just at lunch, and there's just people here.
Yeah. Hey guys.
Thank you guys. Are we ready for this? Do change over for the signing?
Yeah, I'm like, what do we?
What do we do?
Yeah, same. Man, just tell me where to go.
Is this are you thirsty? Do you need your water?
Or maybe I'll drink some just from talking so much.
I think so.
Yeah.
Visited Covington.
No, but I really
wanted to when I went to set for After We Collided, but I didn't go out. It's like, doesn't it look all the same, like Mystic Falls and everything? Yeah, and it's small.
Oh my gosh, I need to do that. I need to do that. Really?
The one in Austin Forever, yeah.
Oh,
and
wow.
it's the originals series. So
I love
we're
the
gonna go,
visuals.
I went the last year for the Vampire Diaries, and then we're gonna go to all the set visits, but then we're gonna go to the after ones too.
Oh, that'd be so cool.
I thought I found the lake last year, and then I realized I was in the wrong spot. So
The lake is hard to find.
I thought I was there one time.
It is
Okay.
very hard to find.
Is that dock actually there?
No, the dock
was
we built.
made for the film,
we
right?
built
Okay.
it. Yeah. That's what I said, but they were like, but we don't know if there's gonna be a second one. I'm like, yes, we do. We do.
Yeah.
I haven't been on the Mystic Falls tour yet, or the Covington tour, but I need to.
Yes.
Yeah. It's so, I did feel like I got
You did the Twilight stuff, I know. in
I did all the
Washington.
posts. And I'm doing the Twilight Festival next month.
Next month you'll
Yeah,
be,
and they were like, do you want to be the guest of honor? I'm like, oh my God. Me?
Yeah, I know.
And I'm even missing my son's birthday.
Oh.
So I was like,
Celebrate before and
I
after.
was exactly. I was like, Disneyland before, Legoland after. You'll be fine.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I'm excited, but
Fun.
yeah.
I can't wait to see all your
other
pics.
questions?
Any other tidbits? Anyone want to say their Team Conrad? Anything? Yeah.
Okay.
Hi.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
What advice would you have for somebody who is into writing but has never really had to start or anything like that? If you're wanting to start, what advice would you give them?
I would say, depending on how your brain, because you don't necessarily have a process yet, so don't focus on I must write chapter 1 and then chapter 2 and then this. Sometimes it's fun to just get a notebook, or if you use iPad, I'm just too old school, so I use a literal notebook and write the characters' names and what they're like, and then I do I'll just look at random people on Pinterest, or they're just mood board kind of things, and pick a setting, and that's what I did for my fun book that I just write when I don't feel like writing my contract books. I just started with this is the character's name, and I named after a coffee shop by me. I was like, this name is so pretty, it needs to be used. And I would put down plot stuff, but if the actual words, or even comps, I want this book to feel Prom Mom, or After, or whatever book or whatever vibe, even if it's the plot will be different, whatever vibe you're going for, maybe reread them, or look for quotes you loved, look at fan edits of stuff that you like, and then if the plot stuff starts coming to you, just write it down or type it out, and then worry about what it will come together later. Because even if you with the After series, it was a little different because I wrote it literally live. But now I'm oh wait, I don't have to, there's no rules. Every writer I know writes their books very differently. I've never met people with the same process. And each book for me even has been a different process. So I just would try, easier said than done, but just try to oh, I have this idea, I'm going to write it down. Sometimes I'll get random scene pop to my head, and I'm I don't even know if this even will fit in the book I'm writing, but I'm going to type it out really quick before I forget. And then just when you're feeling like it, or even if you're not, just go to a coffee shop or go in your room and shut the door and type something out and don't put pressure on yourself. And also, like, I think a lot of people, I had a question not last night, with my LA signing. I'm like, when was that? I don't know. 2 days ago.
2 nights ago.
Yeah. About like, how do I tell my friends and family, and like, how do I share with my friends? And I'm like, you don't have to do that. It's your work, your hobby, your like something that can be yours. You don't have to share it with anybody until you want to. Like, you have the agency to decide when and who you want to read your stuff. So I feel like that takes a lot of pressure off of like thinking about the people in the future that are going to read your work is only stopping you now. So even if you spend like 30 minutes of your day, even if it's not every day, because some of us just don't have the time to do something for 30 minutes for ourselves, but even taking like, for me, I always tell myself like, okay, I could either do an hour of writing or at least outlining or scrolling for inspirational quotes, or I can do nothing. And what is like, or I can scroll on TikTok and watch people I don't know do their makeup. It's like, which sometimes that's also helpful to balance your brain, but it's like we spend so much time worrying about other people or focusing on other people or worrying about the next day when it's like, maybe just take like 30 minutes to yourself and like focus on something. Because if you have that, I've never met somebody that has that calling to like, I want to write, that shouldn't write. So it's like, if you have that feeling, at least explore it. The worst thing that can happen is you did something fun and nothing happened. And it's better to like have that than wonder in 10 years, like, and regret, like, oh, I wish I would have done that thing that I cared about.
Sound advice.
Thank you.
So reading the first book, being a military spouse, I was like, oh my gosh, there's a book about us. Have you ever thought about actually doing book seminars or signings like on base for the spouses there to kind of have that connection and networking?
Yeah, so that was actually with the falling, and when I lived at Fort Hood for 8 years in Texas, or now it's called something else, but it's always gonna be Fort Hood to me. But I always saw these like signings popping up and stuff, and at the time, like, I didn't know most of the authors because they weren't like romance authors, and that's what I read. But we tried to reach out, but they have a new book buyer. It's like a technical answer, but they have a whole new book system, so it's actually way harder. So I think for the third book, or at least hopefully this is what will happen, we're gonna try, maybe not, because I was like, we could just do them at like the PX because that's where all the events were, but it's apparently way harder, and especially because the books aren't necessarily like, there's both sides of like the feelings toward the military, so it just became harder. Like, my publicist was like, this is a lot harder than I thought. Like, you were literally a military spouse, the book is set at a base, so it was just harder. Like, they are more intense about the books they have now and the events they have, but there's always a Barnes & Noble outside of a base. So I'm like, at least we can do like in the towns, because San Diego, for example, I had like half of the crowd was either like ex-military, military, or a spouse. And it was really fulfilling and like full circle moment for me to have, like, because even if you're reading it as like, just like how when I read vampires, I'm not a vampire. I don't know what that feels like, but I still can love the book. But there is something that I wanted to tell, a part of a story that people that have experienced or do get what it's like and how isolating that life can be and how just traumatic, and you don't even have time to unpack it because you're supposed to be strong and not complain and just like support your country, but it's freaking hard. So hopefully my next tour for this series specifically will be like just around military bases, because, you know, that's just like not only who it's for, but that's like, if you get it, you really get it. And I feel like as a reader, especially when I was a military spouse, it was like all the military books were these like sexy soldiers. And I'm like, but where's the like, this is hard. Like, where is the like reality, which not every book has to have that. But for me, if you're going to have a book about something that I'm familiar with, I can't just turn off the like reality of what I just went through for 15 years of my life.
Right.
So yeah, but hopefully, and maybe by then they'll have a new book buyer and it'll be different. But if not, it'll be at least around some military bases, because that's kind of the point. Yeah.
Hi. When it comes to like music, how do you pick songs? Like, do they just like
the
come
playlist.
to you? Because playlists are like the best in every
Thank
single
you.
one. So like, yeah, do they like come to you? Like, how do you like really pick your
Yeah, so most of them just kind of like when I'm writing, it's like the mood I'm in. I'll just pick, like if I'm listening to a song over and over, I'll be like, oh, well, this obviously needs to be there because it obviously is like inspiring this section of the book. And then some of the stuff, like, I forget if Alanis Morissette is in this one or The Falling, but there's like some, like with, I almost spoiled something. But with
this all blends together.
Yeah,
for you. Yeah.
And especially now, like the third one, I'm like, where? Okay, yeah. So there's a character. Well, it's not a spoiler this part, but with Karina's mom, there are times where it was very much like my mom, different. Like my mom stayed there physically in my life, but not mentally. So there are things like nostalgic things like the Alanis Morissette, like listening to that and like remembering times of like her mom falling asleep with like a cigarette lit, and then it's like always worrying about someone. So there were some songs that like take me back to that, and then I think there's like some Matchbox 20, which reminds me of like my like teenage years and just like the like, but it like in a fun way, because there were some really fun times with my mom, like dancing around the living room, and like Karina's mom is very much like my mom, but different, because just different lives. And my mom was definitely not an officer's wife. So different lifestyle, different life. But most of the music just like kind of comes to me. And then there's some songs that even if they feel like they don't fit the tone, like especially like the BTS songs that are in there, it's like if you translate the lyrics, it actually does fit the book. And there's in this one, actually, I think I have a couple songs that aren't in English. But if you just Google the lyrics, if you don't want to listen, I highly recommend listening to the original and then reading the lyrics, but you do you. But the lyrics fit the book. So it's either like nostalgic or something I feel like Karina would love, or just fits the scene, or just songs that bring me, like, just remind me of the book. Did you have
This isn't really a question, but when I was rereading The Falling, I was reading the scenes with Austin and Elodie, and I just really enjoyed their dynamic, and I just wanted to say I'm really looking forward to reading more of them as well. So.
Yeah.
That's what I was telling Anna too. I was like
Yeah.
hardcore shipping them so much. Yeah.
Yeah. If you like Austin and Elodie, you'll definitely like The Burning. They ended up being, especially Austin, and to be honest, like, this isn't a spoiler because I didn't do it, but in the original plan of this series was like Austin was not gonna make it.
Oh wow.
And I couldn't do it. Like, I felt so, like, he felt like my brother, and I cared about him so much. And he's definitely morally gray. He doesn't always do the right thing. He causes chaos and creates messes he can't clean up, but he does have a good heart. And Elodie is like, you'll see, but there's just, everything is not what it seems. And Austin and Elodie are like they ended up standing out. I got a review the other day. It was like, the book focused too much on Austin and Elodie. I'm like, well, you don't want to read the third one. But I was just like, thank you. Because that was like
Yeah.
and also I like creating these like worlds. I don't want to only write about just two humans. Mm-hmm. It's like I like creating like people around them and making everyone kind of feel alive, so you feel like you're reading someone's life, because that's what life is about.
I can't even imagine that ending because Karina's already so pissed off that, that
Yes,
he's joining.
that's what
Like it would have been really hard for her to come back
And it was
from
like,
that.
since I didn't do it and I'm not going to do it, it was like the thing would have been like, that is the, like, if that would have happened, there's no way they could have been together.
Yeah.
And you guys don't even know if they will be together, but it's like there's just no going back from that, and it would have devastated everyone. And they've all just been through enough, and they continue to go through a lot in The Burning and the third one. So I was like, I can't do it. But usually, yeah, I couldn't do it. I was like, this is not gonna happen. I can't bring myself to do it.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sue, should we set up for the signing? Any other questions?
Anna, could I ask you to just share where people can follow you and how people can best keep up with what's coming up next for you and upcoming news?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram. It's just Anna Todd.
And Frayed Pages.
And Frayed Pages. And then Frayed Pages X Wattpad books. But Anna Todd and Frayed Pages are the ones that you can find the other accounts to follow me on.
Right.
what else do I have? My TikTok is just Anna Todd official, but it's very much not like book related at all. It's just like if you want to see what I do every day and
It's like your vibes.
yeah, it's like just like a lifestyle type of
Yeah.
thing. It's absolutely not like for book promotion. And Facebook is just Anna Todd, I think too. Yeah, follow me wherever you want, or just TikTok's definitely the most fun one for me though. Like yeah, I really like it. And at first I was like just a lurker, but and my agent was like really pressuring me because Book Talk is such a thing.
Oh yeah.
And I love what Book Talk has done for so many authors, especially ones that I'm like, yes, they're finally getting like yeah. But for me, it's just I cannot promote myself. Like I can't do it. I barely like. I'm sure you guys notice if you follow me. I barely post my stuff. And then people are like you have a book out in 2 weeks, and my agent kept being like, you need to be on TikTok. You need to be. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna post whatever I want. You never said what. So it's definitely not like. But if you want to know a little bit about my like personality or my daily life or like that kind of stuff, or like shows I like or coffee shops, or if you ever visit LA, I've got a lot of restaurant recommendations.
And they're all bomb.
They're all, I mean, that's like, honestly, if I had a clone, I would definitely be like a coffee shop restaurant blogger because, which I kind of am. I'm just doing it for fun, but yeah. And then that's pretty much it. And my website too, but honestly, like, I don't feel like anybody goes to websites as much as
like social.
Yeah. So socials are where you can find at least the links to my other things.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Can we just have one more round of applause for
Yes.
Thank you guys.
The queen right here.
All right. Big thank you to folks who joined us on the live stream.
Yes, thank you guys.
All right, we can wrap up this portion. Anna, I can take you back to the signing area. What
Okay,
we're gonna
perfect.
have folks do is kind of queue up along here. Anna's gonna be all the way in the back room for
I have that gloss too, by the way. The
So
Dior.
good.
It's
Yes.
so good.
I
I have the
literally, like,
exact
almost
same
have it.
one.
This
Yeah.
one, I have like the pink, like the
But
darker
your
pink
lips
one
look
too.
like pinky, like naturally,
Yep.
but it's a different. Do you have a lipstick on?
I have
and
the Pillow Talk.
Oh,
and then
okay.
This. But usually
Yeah.
I just wear this, but today I was like,
Okay. Oh, I was gonna say I want Janook to take like a photo of us too.
hey, can you take a picture of us real quick?
Because he does the best.
Yeah, literally. So he's like the best ever.
Yeah. I want to do it with this really quick. Yeah.